Hey, my beautiful friends, welcome back. Good to see you here. So today, we're doing some more scatter terrain. Now these pieces are some rock structures that have been weathered over thousands of years to form sort of columns, I guess you could say. We're gonna build them on a base, and again, we're gonna use it for scatter terrain in your tabletop gaming. So, let's get to building it. I'll show you some techniques that I used that I found worked really well. Let's go to the video.
Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have a bin full of XPS scrap foam that is overflowing. So I decided I'm gonna use that on this project here. So to start off with, I cut some bases out of MDF board from the dollar store. That was just the beginning of what is going to be the rock structure. So this was the first thing that I did. Cut these up, shape them, getting them ready to go for the foam. And then I went to the foam pieces and just destroyed them. Cut at them, hacked away at them, trying to make them look as rough as possible, as natural as possible as well. So then all I did, hot glued them to the bases. And just like that, folks, it was that fast. Not really. Anyway, so after that was all ready to go, I pulled out the drywall mud, the drywall compound, and I'm gonna smear this all over these rock structures to give it more texture and to smooth out just a little bit all the hacking away I did at the foam. So just spread that on there, fairly thin coat, and then I let it dry overnight. And here's the fun part. I used my colored washes. Now, you know, not too many rocks have blue in them, but after all the steps that I've taken to finish these pieces, you don't really notice the blue. It still comes through, but it's not in your face. So, blue wash, kind of a maroon red wash. It really starts to get bright, really starts to get funky here, coming up with the yellow one now. This is kind of a yellow-orange wash that I made, and this one's probably the brightest out of all of them. So that's what the finished product looks like after all the washes. So the next thing I did was I took a really heavy dry brush, I guess you could say, of burnt umber and red mixed together. And I went over the whole thing. I wanted to mute those colors, obviously. Mute those colors just a bit so that they wouldn't look too crazy at the final product. So after I did that, I took some of the same paint and then I used just a little bit of white, and I made a fairly lighter color out of that and just did like a medium dry brush over top of that. And again, that's just to mute now the quite reddish color that was on these rocks here. So after that was done, I used another little bit of, and here's the final product after that medium dry brush. So moving on, here comes the black wash. Now this was fun. This really muted everything down, and it was really good because, you know, it was fairly bright. I gotta say, it was fairly bright. But I knew that this black wash would tone down all those colors, would make it look muted, would make it look really cool, getting into all those crevices. So here's the black wash. It turned out really well, as you can see there. So then I mixed up a little bit of a grayish, a light gray color. And again, this is more of a medium dry brush that I put on here. It's a little bit heavier, there's a little more paint on my brush. And that's obviously just to get more of the stone color, the rock color. And this, as you can see, it really starts to make it look more like rock, more like stone. So after that was done, then I took a really, really light pink, I guess you could say, really light, almost white, just a tiny bit of tint in there. And this was a really light dry brush. This was the final dry brush that I did as far as before the next wash that I did. So it ended up pretty good. It ended up really nice, showing a lot of the peaks. That's what this was meant to do, and it did that really well. It turned out really well. So here's that dry brush. And here comes the craziness. I took that yellow wash that I made again, and I washed this whole thing down with it. And at first, your first thoughts are, oh my goodness, what did I do to this thing? But I knew, just like a black wash, when it dries, it dries really muted. And I knew that this would do the same thing, so I wasn't too worried. And you can see how that came out. Like it looked pretty cool. Like it's still wet right now, but even now it looks pretty cool. I kind of liked it. But when it dries, it was just perfect. I was very happy that I got the yellow on there at the end, and it turned out really great. So there you can see it there. It's really muted, but it's there. You can tell. So anyway, I did some glue, put some glue down, and some of those pieces of foam that I cut and hacked away, I glued those down because I wanted those to look like rocks had fallen off and kind of collected at the bottom of the base, as most, you know, natural rock formations do. You know, they have chunks of rock at the bottom. So that's what I did there. Took some paint, painted those up to kind of match a little bit the way that I did the rest of the rock. And then after that, I moved on to getting some flock down. So this is the flock that I made from sawdust and some paint, and I just filtered it. Wanted it to be kind of a smaller flock, a nice fine flock, so I did that. And then I just sprinkled it on top of the glued areas. And I think that looks pretty good, having a little bit of that orange colored flocking on there. But I didn't want to leave it at that. I wanted to have just a little bit of greenery, again, like the other project I did, just to have a little bit of color contrast and just enough life, wanting to live, wanting to grow, that it gives a nice little bit of a pop to these bases. And as you can see there, the mostly finished project, I like the way that looked. It turned out really well with all that flocking on there. And then like I said, I'm gonna move on and I'm gonna put some static grass, just enough to have some color contrast. And I like working with static grass, though. I think I'm gonna have to up my static grass game. I think I'm gonna have to get a better applicator. We'll worry about that later. So anyway, just putting on some static grass here, just enough to show the greenery in contrast, and I think that's it. That works for me, and this project is pretty much done. So I appreciate you guys watching this video. Please come again, and we'll see you soon.